This is WEBS. Welcome to Facts Matter with me, E.B. Smith. As we continue our conversation about the state of Black America, I've asked a friend of mine, Taye, make sure I get this right because I've been pronouncing your name wrong, Taye Uhuru. He is a documentarian.
Taye, like a tie.
Yep, Taye. Taye Uhuru. He is a documentarian, especially when it comes to things of the 1960s in Cleveland, Ohio, for sure. He is a world traveler, a farmer, a beekeeper, an entrepreneur, a rapper, and author of the book Afro Set. And most of all, he's a Heights Tiger. Yes, go for Heights Tigers. One of the things that I want to jump into right away, we got a lot of stuff to cover, brother. You're a fascinating young man. I really appreciate the work you're doing, and we'll get into a lot of that right now. First, I want to talk about the state of Black America. And from your view, where do you see things that, based on where you've been, and you've been all over the country, of course, we'll talk about that in a little bit, but where do you see, based on where you've been in the countries you've been in, how do you see the state of Black America as it stands right now?
Man, the state of Black America is in shambles. I think psychologically we may be doing worse than we've ever been doing in America post-slavery. We definitely suffering from an identity crisis. You know, we don't really know who we are. You ask 10 Black people in America who they are, where they're from, you're going to get a variety of answers.
All right. Do you think that has a lot to do with perception or ignorance?
Man, definitely ignorance for sure, because we don't know our history in general. You know, we don't know our own family history, and that's definitely a result of white supremacy and slavery. We've been disconnected. So, obviously some things we can reconnect with and other things we may not never be able to reconnect with. So that's maybe one of the differences I see on the continent, because Africans have went through the same things that we have went through. But for example, they could say, I'm Zulu, I speak Zulu, this is Zulu land, this is what Zulus wear, you know what I'm saying, and so forth. This is a Zulu spiritual practice, they still have that intact.
Well, yeah, it's something that kind of fascinated me. I've been studying Africa myself for the last 3 years, especially the spiritual side of it, at least. And I was kind of fascinated about how many people were ignorant of the fact that a lot of the religions that is practiced here in the Western emanated from the original Kemet people. And I'm also fascinated that there's still some of us who don't even recognize that Egypt is not in the Middle East, right? So when you travel around the world, I'm going to try to use a better word. I was going to use the word ignorant, but that's unfair to my people. Do you find that we know less about who we are in America as a person than other Black people in other countries?
Yeah, definitely, because like I say, you got Black people in Brazil and Dominican Republic and Haiti. They went through what we went through, the same thing, but they may have just been colonized by a different European, maybe the French or maybe the Spanish or the Portuguese. But I studied abroad in Brazil. I lived in Brazil. I studied abroad in Dominican Republic. I lived there. So one thing that I can tell you a difference is, a Dominican person may say, or a Brazilian person may say, well, this spiritual practice comes from the Yoruba people in Nigeria, or this martial art comes from Angola, or this dance comes from the Congo, where in America, we just kind of like slavery started and then we move forward from there. We don't retain that connection to Africa. Not knowingly, like I say, we can go back and find instances of people who were able to preserve, different words, different parts of the language, or different cultural practices or dances, but it's not out in the open. They're not going to teach you that in school. It's not taught in the community. And one of the reasons for that is Brazil had more Africans than we did. The Caribbean had more Africans than we did. We the minority in America, but they the majority. So they were more
That's interesting.
successful.
Wow. Wow. And what you say, when you offer a perspective that I haven't heard much people talk about, I think I want to say to most of the people that I've met over the years, and I've been in all aspects of this, everything from deep embedded into the religion to everything else. And so what I will say is that if you introduce information about, especially something as sensitive as religion, to African Americans and at least in the U.S., they're very offended. It's like they want to stay colonized. They want to stay ignorant of the fact that a lot of the myths that we use have been kind of rehashed and done the way the Greeks did it, but that's not the way they were intended. That the Yoruba people brought a lot of stuff to us. Do you find that when you start having those conversations, you find the same apprehension as I find, or is it more if you bring it up here in the States at all?
Yeah, definitely in America. I feel like African Americans can be very anti-African. Some of the worst things I've heard people say about Africa and African people come from our own people, just because they, like I say, they may be ignorant because they just don't know. And sometimes when you try to pull their coat to it, give them that information, they may be thrown off by it. It may be hard for them to accept because they've had such a negative perception of African people. And like I say, each country kind of went through the same thing with Europeans, but it did vary in a different sense. So, like I say, you might go to the Caribbean and they might be like, I'm Cuban first, I'm Dominican
Mm-hmm.
first. You go to Africa, you go to South Africa, they may, instead of them saying I'm a South African first, they might say, well, I'm a Zulu first. But in America, we black first. You get what I'm saying? So it's like we put black over African. And despite the differences in those countries, they still have an understanding of that African history. So even if they be like, well, I'm not black, but slavery did happen, it was real, it was horrifying, and this is what Africans contributed to this country.
Well, yeah, I think that a lot of us want to believe the pie in the sky, right? A lot of us want to believe that things were greater because it makes us feel bad. I think it makes us feel bad when we think about how bad things were. And so we live in that icing on the cake instead of finding out exactly what created that problem. I guess I really want to ask you more of the question too, as do the word fault. So when I say the word, when I'm going to ask you this question about whose fault is it, what I mean is who continues to perpetuate the cloud? Is it us not asking enough questions, or is it them hiding it? When I say them, I mean the elite. That's not, now we find out now it's not just the Caucasian people that's hiding the truth. It's a lot of elite blacks too.
Um, I wouldn't say fault. I would say it's our responsibility to find out what our history is, and we have to accept the good, the bad, and the ugly. If you look at the animal kingdom, each group is responsible for their own survival. The lions are responsible for the lions. When they get that buffalo, they not there to leave some for the hyenas or leave some for the vultures or the cantaloupe.
Right.
So if we want to survive, we have to learn our own history. And that's a part of our survival. Not knowing your history is detrimental to not only you, but your children and your grandchildren. So you have to be cognizant of that as well. We got all of the technology now where you can research your family's history up to a certain point. I'm a genealogist, So I help people all the time retrace their history going back hundreds and hundreds of years. You know what I'm saying? And some even further than that. You have DNA, you have genetic testing. You know, you can figure out which parts of the continent you come from. And, you know, you could break down your bloodline by the tribe, the different regions and stuff like that. So it's a lot more information. So I would say it's our responsibility in every capacity, in every aspect of our life to survive.
Yeah, because you bring up an interesting point for me. When I won't say stumbled upon this, when God brought all of this information to me 5 years ago, and I walked away from what I thought was a traditional way for me to live, and just started asking a lot more questions. It took a lot of mindset changes. I remember, and I'll say this in due respect to the people that lived before me. I remember seeing a lot of Tarzan pictures, and they showed the Africans as savages, right? I remember seeing a lot of military pictures where they show the Africans attacking the American soldiers. But what the truth is that we were not the savages, and I'll just say that, right? Based on behavior in those days, it appears, and this is based on archaeological events. And the only reason why you and I know a lot about the history of the Yoruba people, I mean, maybe more you because you've been over there, but it's because the information is captured in a museum, stolen from the African islands and brought to museums all over the world, right? So that fact itself lends to the point that I'm trying to emphasize here, is that we have no reason to be ignorant, because even in treachery, there's information, right? So what I would like for you to do is to comment on, what do you think the next step forward for our people in this country to be able to come to a level of what I say enlightenment? What do you think the first step should be for all people, not just young, but the older African Americans all over the world, maybe?
Okay, repeat that. You said what would be the first step towards doing what?
For us kind of regaining, I'll just put enlightenment, right? Because we're like living in a cloud. We're still kind of ignorant of the things that's going on around us. I don't think we're ignorant as a people. I think we're ignorant to some of the facts in our life. What do you think the first step is in us regaining back information for ourselves and moving ahead and bettering ourselves?
Man, that's a great question. I mean, I think it starts with, yourself. You have to take accountability for, the things that you don't know, and you have to teach yourself. And by us living in the age of information, you have a cell phone, you have a smartphone, you have basically a computer in your hand. So you can pretty much look up anything you want to look up. You can learn a new language. You can learn how to fix things. You can learn how to start a business, and you can use that same phone to research your history. And it's an educational thing, most definitely. So, like somebody told me, you may not be able to afford to go to college or go to a school in particular, but you can afford the books. And now they got books for free online. So the more you read, you know what I'm saying, the more enlightened you will become. You could read one book and it can change your life. So if you're reading books every day, every week, you know what I'm saying, it's only going to help you. It's only going to empower you, because reading is a big part of it. You know what I'm saying? Like they say, if you want to hide something from a black person, put it in the book. But, obviously, as a result of slavery, we got punished for reading. So a lot of us had that fear instilled in us. But the truth is, reading affects every aspect of your life. So if you can't read, or you struggle with reading, or you don't like reading, that's going to affect you economically. That's going to affect you psychologically. That's going to affect your health. That's going to affect everything. You're going to have a much harder life.
Yeah. Yeah. I said this to somebody the other day. If you still think that America as a landmass is bigger than Africa, you still need to do some more reading. I'm amazed at how many people say they know a lot about Africa and say things that are just blatantly wrong, right? And so sometimes it's frustrating, right? For I think by one estimate, Africa has 18% of the world's population, right? And where are you going to put those people? That right there, that fact alone proves how big Africa is. But there's still Black here in the country who are totally ignorant of that. There's sometimes I can't even watch somebody's Instagram where they're asking them questions because it's so bad that it's frustrating. I said, there's no way these people can know more about the politics in America and not know enough about Africa. Speaking of Africa, so you started taking this journey to Africa. Why?
Well, it started for me when I was younger. You know, my mom, she drove the Greyhound bus. So she would take me and my brothers and sisters on trips. We'd go to like Buffalo or New York or Cincinnati or Chicago. So that's when I developed the traveling bug. And then as I got older, you know, I started traveling on my own, going to different states. And eventually I got my passport. And Africa was a place that I always wanted to go and learn more about and experience. But, you know, I've been going to Africa before, you know, it was a lot of information, positive information about Africa online. So if you Google something about South Africa 10 or 15 years ago, you know, you would see, like you say, negative images, nothing but poverty, you know, people without clothes and different things like that. So I had to go over there and see it for myself. So, you know, fortunately now you have so many people traveling that they are, you know, kind of trying to balance it out by posting, you know, more positive images. And historically in my family, I come from a family of Pan Africanists. So my great grandfather, he migrated from the South, from Atlanta to Cleveland during the Great Migration. So in the 1920s, he came up to Cleveland, and him and his wife, my great grandmother, they joined the UNIA. They were followers of Marcus Garvey. And my grandmother, she was able to attend some of the rallies and marches and meetings and stuff. And I know this because she told me about it. So she told me about Marcus Garvey when I was little. And she told me about her father. And what she expressed to me was, that we are Africans and we should go back to Africa, or at least that's what her father wanted for himself and his family. And, you know, that's something that stuck with me. So I always admired African people and African history and African culture. And my uncle, which is my great grandfather's grandson, he was the leader of the biggest Black nationalist organization in the state of Ohio. So he promoted going back to Africa as well. So I feel like that's something that's been passed down to me genetically. And once I got the opportunity to go, I wasn't disappointed. So if I would have went and I had a horrible experience, I would have never went back. So I've been to about 20 different African countries thus far.
Well, I think one thing that the ancients talked a lot about is being able to always connect with divinity, right? To being able to find out where the divinity at. And for us, part of that divinity is being back in the nature in Africa, right? Being able to make one with the land, whatever the land is. And for us, the land, even though there's land here, the land that we connect with first was the land of Africa. And so when you say that, do you recommend all African Americans or African descent should visit, if not once in a lifetime, as frequent as they can? Do you recommend that that's the trip they should take, almost like an homage?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was a life changing experience for me, and I do group tours, and I take groups of people every year to Africa, and for the most part, you know, they feel like it's a life changing experience for them as well, because a lot of times we only know what we see, we only know what
Mm-hmm.
we taught. When we go to school, we being indoctrinated, so and we get these images in these books. It's negative, 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 negative. So, like I say, it's our responsibility if we are going to expose our children to that, you know, the schools and the television and, you know, the negative media about Africa. It's on us to um, go back to the continent and connect with our brothers and sisters and fix some of those inconsistencies and see another side of Africa, which could be life changing and empowering for our people.
Yeah. So I guess that's been life changing for you, right? To be there amongst the people. Um, how many countries have you visited so far overall, not just African countries? How many countries so far have you visited?
So far, I've been to about 70 different countries or autonomous regions or territories. However, like Egypt, for example, I've been to Egypt like 10 times. So I don't have a count of how many times I've been to this one or that one. But, I've studied abroad in different countries. I've lived in different countries. So,
Yeah, so recommend that. So really quick, while we're on that subject, how do people get in touch with you if they want to take a trip to Africa? That's first. And the second thing is, how do they get in touch with you when they want to have their genealogy traced out? I want to make sure I don't get to the end of the show and miss all of that. So give me those two things right now.
okay, definitely. My email is campcleveland216, CampCleveland 216 at gmail.com. And my social media handles are Taye Uhuru, TayeUhuru, Facebook,
Okay.
Instagram, TikTok, YouTube.
We'll put that in the bottom of this video and any audio that'll go on the other channels. Talk a little bit about your book. Let's talk about your book and in the journey in writing your book. I saw some great interviews if you've done the book, and I'm actually going to plug their interview inside this video because I think the interview that you gave were just really good. But I wanted you to touch on some here about the book and the journey to the book and why did you write a book, and talk a little bit about your uncle as well.
Yeah, most definitely. So the book is about the Afro Set, a Black nationalist organization, and they were at the forefront of reintroducing Black Americans in Cleveland, Ohio, and different cities and states to African culture, African history, African fashion, African music, African language, African spirituality. So this was in the 60s, and the focus of the book is to go inside and see more about the organization. Instead of just looking at the guns and the self-defense, we talk about the shops and the classes on learning Swahili, classes on spirituality or nutrition or drug awareness. And, they taught people how to sew, how to do pottery, how to make earrings, how to make dresses, so it was an independently funded organization. And they also practice self-defense.
It's interesting. I saw in one interview, there's a question that was asked to you. First of all, let me backtrack. Give me your uncle's name. I'm sorry, that's been missed a lot. Give me your uncle's name.
My uncle is Omar Majid. He's the co-founder of the Afro Set. He came up with the name the Afro Set. He started the Afro Set in 1967 with Harlil Jones. And he is a poet, a playwright. He was a musician. He started his own newspaper. He was a traveler as well. He went to different states and met with different political leaders and different things like that. He left the country before. He was a very, very powerful and respected person. And one of the interesting things about him, he was a teenager when he started this organization. So he was a teenager by day and a revolutionary by night.
Well, that's interesting because you have a rap song about do revolutionaries go to heaven. I thought was so poignant. My brother, sometimes I hear things and I go, wow, this should be all over this country. We should be repeating some of these phrases all over because that's where our enlightenment comes. I mean, you and I are some ages apart, but I can tell you actually graduated probably from school. I graduated from school this one of the years you were born, right? So, but I'm just amazed at how much information you've been able to gather and give away to the people freely. How much support do you think you get in doing this, and not to just kind of cut down anybody else that's not giving you support, but do you think you should receive a lot more support based on the information you're providing to people?
Well, I have to be honest. I find myself in a position like a lot of other people that do work in the community. I feel like I get the minimum support, you know what I'm saying? And it's unfortunate because the more you give back, the more you try harder. You know, like you say, some people, when you give them this information, you know, they kind of reject it. You know what I'm saying? So it's, I could give you an example. I co-founded a food cooperative. I started an urban garden. I started a mental health group for black men and black children, you know, so I'm constantly in the neighborhood because a lot of people may comment, share, like, and say different things, but I actually could tell you from experience. Like I walk up and down the street and knock on people's doors. I stand on the corner and engage people. I pass out flyers. I have these conversations. I go to meetings. I have a podcast. You know, I do so many things to try to um, get this information out there and get other people involved. You know, despite me being in Africa, I still try to maintain uh, a certain level of activity in America because I have family there. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, let's talk. Give the how people can get in touch with your mental health page on Facebook.
The men is I have two mental health groups. Mental health group for black men and black boys, and the other one is mental health for black people. So it's basically a place where people can find encouragement and information about mental health. We have group calls. We talk about suicide, stress, anxiety, depression, and a lot of other things. You know what I'm saying? I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a professional, but it is a place where a lot of people come, and then we could trade information. We could talk about coping mechanisms. We do meditations, we do yoga, you know, we exchange information.
Yeah, and it's right on Facebook. They can just put the search in there, and we'll see if I can get a logo or something. I want to make sure they pick the right page to ask to join. It's actually interesting. I went on there, and even me, you know, like I said, I, I, I am encouraging every black male to at least get a session of counseling to find out what's in them that needs to be uh, suppressed. You know, getting rid of. We got to get rid of some things, right? And so even so, when I went on the page, I was some things triggered some things that I had overcome, and I remember saying to myself, "Wow, had I not gone to counseling, I would have still been dealing with the same thing these people are dealing with." So it is a great place to share, and I appreciate you for that. And it's made me just feel really encouraged that people in your age generation are really moving forward, and I believe the change is going to come from your generation. Um, and this, I just really believe that there's some of us that are so stuck where we're at that the only change can only come from people that see things a different way. And I think at this point, your generation is starting to prove that right now. So I appreciate that. One of the last things I'm going to get to is we talked about support. I'm based on what I understand is Black Wall Street was all over the country, like North Carolina, Birmingham, all those places. There was another place in even Oklahoma that had a Black Wall Street. And one of the things that I found interesting is they were destroyed not just because of the elite white people, but because there was a lack of support amongst the blacks after all, because white people would put hotels and restaurants right next to some of these institutions, and some of us would choose them over ours. And so when you talk about the support that you're not as much of the support you need and you're not getting, I wonder whether that same mentality is playing a role in that. Do they see people like you that's out there fighting? Do you think they see you as just somebody who's making noise? I don't think, do they find you significant? What do you think? Why is there a lack of support, in your opinion?
I think it's psychological because if you hate yourself, then you gonna hate, you know what I'm saying, everybody else that look like you. You get what I'm saying? So we project that on our people. So if we pray to a white guy, we get educated by a white teacher, the police white, the fireman white, you know what I'm saying, then the businessman must and gotta be white. You know what I'm saying? It's better to do business with them. And even if the person is not white, if you look in our community, right? You'll have the corner store, you had a fried chicken spot, you had a hair spot, you got the nail shop, you got the liquor store, you got the gas station. All of these different groups of people will support them, and then we'll get to a black business and we'll harp on, customer service or the quality of a product, but yet we'll keep them in business for years and years and years when we could do the same thing for ourselves. So, for example, you might have a neighborhood like Glenville, 20,000 people, Huff, maybe 15, Collinwood, 25,000. If 20,000 people took $5, everybody put $5 in, that's 100,000. We can open our own corner store and we can employ our own people. We need cashiers, we need people to stock the shelves, we need people to sweep and mop the floors, we need a delivery guy, we need security, we need all of these different things that we can do for ourselves. But since our image of black people, which we happen to be black, is so destroyed, we have a negative perception of all black people. So we're less likely to show them support. And another example I'll give you is it's a Barbie doll test that they did back in the 40s, and they still do it today. They'll take white kids, they'll take Latino kids, Asian kids, black kids, and they'll put dolls in front of them, and then they'll say, what doll is the ugly doll? What doll is the mean doll? What doll is the dumb doll? What doll, you know what I'm saying? What doll looks like you? And then you'll see a lot of the black children, they 4 or 5 years old, and they have to accept the fact that, oh, wow, I'm black. But obviously, their parents didn't directly teach them this, like, oh, you black, you at the bottom, or you the worst. But like I say, you send them to school and you let them watch TV, and they get influenced by all of these things, and they get older. So these is 4 and 5 year olds telling you this. Imagine what a 55-year-old is going to feel after they actually done been through life.
But I think it's narrative, right? I'd probably put my kid's head into a wall if they said some of the things I hear some of these youth say about themselves, right? And I'm really serious about that. I take it very serious. We have a responsibility to even when, I bought all of my daughters a Bible. But when I handed them the Bible, I said, there's some deeper discussions you need to have, but you got to start here. This conversation I won't have with them right now. They're young adults now. I want them to make the choice to do things they want to do. And it's for anybody else, right? And so I hand them a Bible, but I make sure it's got some study notes in there. I tell them where lexicons are, and I want them to do a deeper study so that when I introduce them to information that I've discovered over years, it makes sense. But let's start at the basics. You need to include your culture in everything you do. You need to make sure that you are finding out more about Ethiopia. You need to find out about Nile River. You need to find out about all these things because it helps, like you just said earlier, us rediscover who we are. We have a responsibility to our children. Again, I'm thanking people like you that are keeping us out there, because I'm too had to change my mindset going to a black restaurant. I had to change my mindset when I go into a black neighborhood. I recently moved from an all-white neighborhood to a predominantly black neighborhood, and I had to change my perception. Our mental mindset, even at my age, has been so embedded with negative thoughts that we can't correct the things of our people because we are messed up also. What do you say about that? Give me your comments about that.
Yeah, definitely. I can agree because it's like you in a toxic environment. So, like going to Africa, for me, it's removing myself from that situation and getting to see the hospitality that African people offer, and them welcoming us, offering land, offering business opportunities, offering us a place of refuge, and also getting into nature. That's a big part of it. We live in these concrete jungles. We was born in nature. So, if you touch the soil, you touch the trees, you touch the leaves, you touch plants, you breathe the fresh air, you touch animals, those things release hormones in your body, to make you feel better. You eating fresh fruit that's not processed, it's not covered with chemicals. It's just so many benefits to escaping that type of life. You know what I'm saying? Where some people, they never left Cleveland in their life. They may live to be 80 years old. They never left Ohio. You know what I'm saying? So they never got a chance to see something better.
Yes, it's interesting. I think it was the actor, I can't remember his name, from Cleveland. And he talked about being able to go out in the soil and put his foot on the soil every day. And he thought how wonderful it was. And as I was reading and studying, I saw some teaching on that thing. And so I try to do that once a week. I'm outside at least working 3 or 4 miles a week, trying to keep myself out in the fresh air and just kind of, and that's my meditation time and praying. So yeah, true that. I think that the things that you're speaking about only comes with asking questions and being receiving the answer in a way that you want the answer, as opposed to that's not what I've learned. Because let's face it, a lot of the stuff that America has learned, they're now admitting was wrong. And so kudos to the people in America that have, even the people who 20 years ago didn't want anything to do with nature building. Nature building, not nation building, but nature building is now starting to come around and realize that we are screwed up. So I think for the white people that sit alongside the people like MLK and, and NAACP and the people that stand next to Al Sharpton now, and the people that's promoting your book, I saw some of that, and the people that are interviewing you that are not us, because it takes a lot of courage for them to say, okay, we messed up and here's some things we need to do to straighten out. Have you found a lot of support? Well, I'm going to say a lot. Have you found some support among Caucasian people? Surprisingly, has it surprised you? And if so, has it surprised you?
Yeah, you get white individuals that show you support, definitely. So I think it's just a matter of perspective. Ultimately, as a black person in America, you can decide to stay in America, and you can take like a Martin Luther King or Fred Hampton route, you know what I'm saying, and work with different groups of individuals who want to help you move forward. Or you could take, a separatist route. You could go like the nation or the Republic of New Africa, and like you say, recreate a Black Wall Street and completely isolate yourself and live amongst only black people and have a butcher, a baker, milk your own cow. But you either gonna have to stay in there, or you're gonna be forced to come in and out, and you're still gonna have to deal with other groups of people. Or the last option is what Malcolm and Garvey said: you can go back to Africa and connect with your brothers and sisters. But from my experience, there have been people all over the world who are not African American that have shown me support. It's not I wouldn't say it's more, but they have shown significant support. So I could give you an example. I have a podcast, and when I reach out to the HBCU, say like a Howard, a Tuskegee, Clark, a Spelman, I may not get a response. But if I reach out to a PWI, Ivy League, I reach out to Harvard, the greatest university in the world, or Yale or Princeton, I get responses. I get 10 to 15 professors who are not African American who will come on my show to talk about psychology, anxiety, depression, and stress, and give me information that I can use to help my own people.
Give the name and the link to the show, your show.
The name of the podcast is Taye Uhuru Speaks.
Very interesting. And I remember I interviewed you, I want to say a long time ago, and you weren't doing these at the time. And I saw somebody that had the similar name as you, and I'm like, man, this guy's got a lot of interesting people on here. And I looked up and it was you, and I kind of smiled and say, what a difference a few years make. And again, and you're right, all the information these people are giving up, and that's what kind of fascinated me, because these were not African American people. They were not from African descent. Many of the people you have on the show are very intelligent people that are giving information that everyone needs. And so I thank you again for that. I guess I'm going to close our conversation out by kind of have you dive into what does America, the new America, look like? After this, I'm going to tell you what one of the past guests said, but what does America look like to you for us in the next 20 years?
Honestly, I think it will be more of the same because we have to be honest. We've been in America or North America at least 400 years. We haven't had a break or a change in the behavior and the treatment of African American people. So if we looking for that to change dramatically within 20 years, I think it's a little bit naive to think that way, but I could be totally incorrect. So that's why I took it upon myself to go to Africa. So, for example, the number one reason why I left America was racism. So, if I have an issue with police brutality, I think that police will kill me or harm me or beat me or throw me in jail simply because I'm black. When I go to Ghana, I don't have that problem at all. You understand what I'm saying? So I wanted to do something now. I don't want to wait. I want to have my children in an environment where they don't even have to go through that. I don't even want to put them through that. You understand what I'm saying?
Yep. I mean, I could just go on and on about the things that I've learned over the last 5 years. I mean, the show's not about me, but I think that you are. I want to say that spirit from me that I see doing those things, and so I thank God that people like you have that's the energy to do what you're doing and to not be comfortable where you're at. Our great friend Matawa Shaheed, as long as he's been living, he wants to have a good perspective, but he is too a realist, right? He understands. He's seen this world, and his answer was similar to yours, right? He said some things that I'll just let you listen to the podcast to get, but in order to solve the problem, we're living in an illusion. We're living in an illusion if we think it's going to change because we just sit down and just receive it. It's not going to change. We have to help change it. I'm grateful for you. People like you motivate me to do some things different, which is why we have the show called Facts Matter, because I just want to discuss the things that are really in our way. Brother, I thank you for being here with me. I think that one of the most significant dates that we haven't talked about here is the date you were born. And the date you were born put you here to solve the problem of the people that are already here. And so I'm grateful for you that you're doing the work. What I'm going to see if I can encourage everyone to do, and then you're going to give us a page we can send it to. Do you have Zelle, Do you have Zelle, Taye? Zelle or Cash App?
I have Cash App. My Cash App is Taye Uhuru.
Okay. I'm going to encourage all of those who are listening to this podcast and watching it to send a minimum of $15 a month to Taye to do the work. And yes, I saw that he's doing farm work and trying to buy land here in Cleveland, taking these trips. He's self-sufficient. He's doing the work then. So I'm going to encourage all of us. It's $15. Some of y'all give 3 times that much to churches you don't even like. That you go to this Cash App and send a minimum of $15 a month, every month, without looking, and send it to someone that's going to do the work. And I'm sure he's going to appreciate you. And Taye, you'll reach out to those people and tell them thank you when you receive those gifts. I really hope that helps you. I'm going to start it today myself. I thank you, my brother. I appreciate you for being on the show. This has been the Facts Matter with E.B. Smith with Taye Uhuru.